Dr. Zane Sterling, thanks for coming to talk to me about the book.
Thanks for having me.
You are one of my favorite clients I've ever worked with. I think you and I had a lot of fun together on the trail. Would you agree?
I would agree, absolutely.
Awesome.
We had a good time.
I want to start from the beginning. Tell me who you are and how you came to find me and my work.
Well, I'm Zane Sterling. I've been a chiropractor for 40 years. Had a number of different businesses in terms of just serving people, helping people. I've had a financial services brokerage and started coaching high-level professionals and doctors in terms of just life success, business success. And so I took some time away from that, and I felt like I needed to get back up to speed.
Sure.
I needed a little, I don't know, not necessarily a little push, but just maybe some encouragement, maybe some, kind of just get me off in the right direction. Yeah. And that's where you came in, Jessica. You were highly recommended, and I was referred to you by another professional, and we just got going.
Yeah. Quick question for you, and I'm sort of dying to know, was the fact that I take my clients out hiking any sort of deciding factor for you in working with me, or was that silly or goofy? What were your initial impressions of, what do you mean she takes me out hiking?
Well, I thought of it as a positive aspect, in that my life, a lot of my life has been around fitness.
Sure.
And I thought, I like to work with like-minded people. Yeah. I certainly didn't want to walk into our first meeting and find out that you were, overweight or didn't know anything about fitness, that type thing. So I took it as a very positive first step, if you will. And I guess I look forward to meeting you because of that, because I thought, okay, someone that emphasizes getting out of the office, getting out of the norm, is going to have ideas that are probably fresh to me. And that's what I really liked.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember, so the first day we were together, we had this strategy session. We were going to go hiking together. You know where I'm going with this,
yeah.
Right? So you show up in my office, and you're an avid hiker already, right? So yep. I wouldn't say you're someone that scares easily with a little sprinkle of rain, but I remember vaguely, you and I were both standing there in front of the office, arms crossed, looking out the window, and it was just pouring like cats and dogs. Yeah. And we had to pivot in that moment and just start our engagement together around just doing strategy in the office. I'm sure you remember that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, our first day together was pure business strategy in the office, opposite of how I like to start. Tell me a little bit about that experience and just brainstorming in the office.
Well, I had looked forward to the hike. And as I recall it, maybe a little bit, I don't know, a little funny. Neither one of us wanted to call it off.
I know. We were kind of standing there
we were standing there well, it's up to you. No, it's up to you. Well, I'll go out in the water.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had more of an intense session up front because of that, because we had more time to spend together. And I thought it would, I don't know, I guess in the hike, I thought it would be a little lighter and a little more just throwing ideas around, brainstorming.
Sure. Where
we literally sat down and started working right from the start.
Yeah.
And so that I thought it was very positive. It was a little more of an intense session that I would have anticipated.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful to interview you for this book is because you are one of the very few people I've ever worked with that had this experience of, unfortunately, we didn't go hiking first. And so we did the traditional business consulting strategy session in the office. But then as we were wrapping up, I was like, no, we can't. This can't be it. I want to see you next week. Let's just hike next week together.
Sure.
And so you have both perspectives of working with me without the hike and then with the hike. Tell me about our hike together and how that maybe helped unlock areas of your brain for what we did next.
Well, a lot of times in coaching, we'll say, you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
And so I didn't know what to expect hiking. I knew that I looked forward to it. But when we went out hiking, it wasn't it wasn't intense or difficult at all. It was very just open-minded and letting ideas flow, where you were asking some questions and kind of interacting with me as I communicated with you. And it was very interesting to me because it didn't seem pushed or pressured at all. It just, ideas came through, and I had answers come to me that I didn't even know were out there as you asked certain questions. And I think the hike and being out in I wouldn't call it an unusual environment, but an unusual environment to be with a business coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I really enjoyed it. I thought it got over way too soon.
Oh yeah, you know what? We should have hiked longer. I agree.
Even though I recall the second hike, it was still kind of wet from the
yeah, that's true.
From the rain, so we were sliding around.
We were a little muddy that day.
But
let's talk more about the ideas that occurred to you. And one of the reasons I was interested in chatting with you about this is because of your background, being a chiropractor, being a doctor, and someone who's an avid outdoorsman. You exercise regularly. You hike at 5 a.m. in the morning. Just still got to join you on one of your 5 a.m. hikes.
Dark hunter.
Yeah, I got a headlamp.
There's not a lot of people on the trails.
Right. Well, I love that. But where I'm going with this is my whole methodology is about getting people out of their comfort zone, asking them these specific questions to unlock those answers that either they forgot existed or didn't even know existed. Are you comfortable maybe sharing one or two of those insights with me that we had on the trail that you maybe said something and you were like, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions, and I don't know what order it was, but one of the questions you asked me was, I had shared with you, I've been thinking about this for years in terms of getting back into some of the coaching and more life coaching than necessarily healthcare based.
Yeah.
And you asked me a question that it struck me, but it didn't stop me. And that was, well, what's taken you so long? Why have you waited years? Why have you bounced this off of, because I mentioned I'd bounce this off of a lot of my friends, a lot of my business associates, a couple of former business partners. And you're like, well, what's taking you so long? What's holding you back? What are you concerned with? Are you, are you afraid of something? Are you waiting for something to happen? And that was a question that I didn't necessarily expect, but really helped me think through it. And I thought, what am I waiting for? And so being out, out in the, I guess, what you call the real world, out hiking, you have different answers and your brain works differently than sitting in a box, whatever. I don't care how big your office is. It's still a box.
It's still a box,
and our thoughts and ideas tend to get a little boxed in, if you will. And so out there, that was the one question that you hit me with where I was like, what is holding me back? And I really think that's where I opened up and said, okay, there is nothing holding me back. It was are you concerned it's going to fail? And I was like, no, I've never failed at anything.
Right. Yeah.
This isn't going to be the first. So anyway, it just opened my mind, and I liked, I guess, the way you presented it and questioned me in just allowing me to open up and go, okay, what is going on? You didn't tell me, this is how I see it, but you engaged me in terms of, okay, let's let you think, let's let your mind open up a little bit. And that really helped.
Good.
Yeah.
And listen, you're a coach yourself. And so I think oftentimes the tricky dynamic with coaching is that you have to remove yourself a bit and your preconceived ideas of telling someone what to do, which is traditional consulting.
Yeah.
And kind of like guiding them on their own path of uncovering that for themselves. And that's a tricky line sometimes to follow.
Absolutely. And, we talk a lot. I was talking with one of my clients yesterday, and I said something I say a lot, and I didn't come up with it. I've heard it many times, but you can't push a rope. And you have to ask questions, maybe in a leading manner, but maybe just wide open, and say, okay, we've got to pull towards the result we want. We can't push you. Right. And I think so many coaches out there, and this is what I enjoyed about you as well. There was no pushing, but so many coaches out there think, I'm going to build you, I'm going to make you, I'm going to produce you, I'm going to do all these things because I know what's best for you. And I don't believe that's coaching.
I agree.
coaching is, pulling the rope, bringing the person out and allowing them to, if you will, discover what they haven't discovered yet, maybe thinking in a different term or a different way, but not just grinding and pushing it into them. And I see so much of that. I think that, I really want to make a point of that. That was something that I felt was very positive about my experience with you, was not having you try to put me into a box that you'd found successful in the past. Said, listen, I've done this before. I've worked with these big Fortune 500 companies. I know what I'm doing. Just let me do it to you. And I just saw this, creativeness that you allowed to happen with your questions. And I found that very refreshing.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And listen, I have a ton of respect for you. I mean, you have built multi-million-dollar business endeavors. You've ran a lot of successful things on your own. You are a successful entrepreneur, a doctor, background in finance. And so I think a lot of my work, and typically the people that find me are impact-driven entrepreneurs or professionals.
Sure.
And if I get too prescriptive in anything I'm doing, I'm really squashing their ability to change lives. And so I see myself as a guide, not even, a prescriptive coach. So I want to go back to the hike, okay? And the reason being is I'll share you my perspective, but I really want to hear yours. So we had the first day together, and we're doing this intense working session in the office the whole time. I think maybe we braked for lunch. Maybe I fed you, right? Hopefully I fed you.
That's important. I get fed.
We gotta have food. However, we spent 6 hours in my office that day just working on your strategic plan for building out this sort of business model. But then the following week, when we went hiking together, we didn't hike long, as you mentioned. I think it was under an hour, but we drove to my office, and I think we had about an hour and a half together. And here's what struck me about the difference is that not only did we finish your strategic plan, but we also started framing out your intellectual property, taking all these amazing ideas and concepts you've had for decades in your coaching and how you've really helped people. You and I feel like our brains really got turned on to start seeing all your knowledge very clearly and maybe how to formulate that in a way that your clients could understand.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your experience. I just felt like it was night and day for me a little bit of here's 6 hours in the office. We accomplished some, but man, we hiked. And then in less than a third of the time, we knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely. And I think maybe not so much call it a refresher, but just getting out and getting away from, where your normal brain works, where you've been in the office or you've been with certain associates or certain people. You get into this realm of thought processing, and you don't realize that you're going down this trail, and it's the same trail you've gone down before.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean to use the word trail, but when we're out on the trail, it's a different trail, if you will. And you're opened up to new thoughts. And that's why I think when we came back in and we had that hour and a half and we got so much done, because I guess just even almost unconsciously opened up more. And instead of going down that same trail of reasoning and thought and decision making, I was over here in another realm, if you will, and going, oh, this is much more creative.
Yeah.
Which I don't tend to be a terribly creative person, but this is much more creative. And I realized as we were going through that, I was leaving some of my, self-doubts and some of my thoughts behind because of the hike and because we just weren't using the same parameters, if you will.
Right.
And the hike is what opened that up. And I think, if I wanted to say the most positive thing about what we were doing, hiking together, it's just so many people don't get that opportunity. Right. They don't get out of that particular realm that they've been making decisions in. And when you get out hiking, all of a sudden you've got different perspective. Maybe it's the creativity, maybe it's a new angle that you're thinking. So I think that's why we had that hour and a half that was so productive.
So productive.
Yeah.
You know what's so science backs all of this up, right? And with your experience in being chiropractor and in movement, I've really been studying the whole concept of bilateral stimulation and how that changes the way our brains behave.
Yeah, left and right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel like getting people out hiking in nature, and we both left our cell phones in the car. I didn't even get a picture of us that day because our cell phones are in the car. But I think what's interesting in the science behind it, it seems to, the 30-minute is the threshold where your brain sort of switches. I like to say it switches on.
Yeah.
But one of the most fascinating things I have to tell you, you were the first person I experienced this with, was that the studies show that when your brain turns on and you kind of hit that 30-minute mark in movement, in nature, unplugged, that lasts for hours, sometimes days, depending on how long you've done the hike afterwards. And I feel like you're the first person that, while I knew the concept was always working in the background, it became so apparent to me because of the week before that we had working together. I was like, whoa, this is night and day.
We got to get out.
Yeah, we got to make this
absolutely
this happen.
And not so much scientifically based, but you mentioned I hike, and I hike with my son a lot, and the creativity, the discussions we have when we're out hiking, and we're around each other a lot, but the discussions we have on a trail and hiking are substantially different than what we would have in everyday life.
Sitting at the kitchen table over dinner or something, right?
And same thing I realize, taking it to another level when hiking is one thing. Yeah. Going in the dark is a whole nother.
Oh, yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're not getting all this input, all this stimulus of sight.
Right.
It really, your headlamp is on, you're 10 feet, 15 feet in front of you. And that, again, that opening up, just going in a different realm of thought is tremendous. Yeah. So left brain, right brain, I don't know what you call it. It's just allowing you to open up. And so many of the people I'm sure you work with, high-level professionals, they've been making decisions in the same realm, if you will, the same manner for maybe decades. And they're really good at it. But to look over here and go, oh, here's a whole nother area of decision making that I haven't looked at. Right. And I think that can be tremendous for just someone starting out, a startup, or someone that's been around, a little older like me, and you don't realize that until you're actually out there doing it. Yeah. And I think in terms of your position there, almost like a guide. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to go out on some huge hike, I would like somebody that's been there before.
For sure. Yeah.
And I see that where you are, not necessarily that to force a decision or any kind of certain process, but it's to guide that opening up of your brain, if you will.
Right. So this leads me to a question. We had a second hike, you and I together, and this was months afterwards, after we did the strategic plan and all of that. Yep. And I know you dealt with some personal things this past year that really changed your mindset. But one of the other reasons I was interested to chat with you about the process is that hike. We actually discussed maybe not doing a lot of the stuff we'd put work in together. Yeah. And I feel like most clients that traditionally would come to a business coach or consultant and then ultimately maybe decide to not move forward with some of the work they did would call that a failure. I don't necessarily think that's maybe how you feel. You tell me, but we had an interesting conversation about there's two currencies in life, right? There's time and there's money. And I remember on our second hike really unpacking which currency was maybe most important for you at this point in your life.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if there's anything you want to share around that.
I certainly did not think of it as any failure at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Even though we were well into the coaching agreement that we had, and you were delivering exactly what was expected. I was the one that was looking at it going, okay, I'm at a certain age in life. I've got a certain level of success. Do I want to keep driving, these 80, 90, 100-hour weeks and keep going the way I've done over the last 40 years? Or do I want to, kind of back off and ease off? And again, it's that you can't push a rope. You weren't trying to tell me what to do.
No,
you
not
weren't,
at all.
Guiding me or saying, well, Zane, this is really what you ought to do. It was more, how do you feel and what do you want to do? And where do you feel your energy and your time is best, best served? And, it came out, my answer was, I still want to serve. I still feel like
Sure.
I have almost a duty because of the mentorship I've had in the past, because of the success I've enjoyed. I have a duty to share this with others, and not necessarily on the 80-hour, 90-hour a week
Right. basis
that I have done. But I guess what got me was the openness you had and where you were okay with.
Totally.
You didn't look at it at all like, well, if I don't give him this, he's going to think that I failed him. It was just an open communication we had, and allowed me to think it through and process it. And it wasn't something where, I wanted to decide it overnight. It was a long-term process.
Yeah. And I think, so I've had my own experience with business consultants and coaches in various stages. And I really think, too, that a lot of people tie up their own agenda in the business arrangement that they have.
Yeah.
And I think working with you was such an awesome experience of, I wanted to pull myself out of it for you and say, you know what, I don't know if doing exactly what we thought this would be is the right idea for you now. And I wanted to allow that space to be open with whatever ultimately made you happy at the end of the day was what was most important to me to unpack on the trail, not what would bring me more business or you more headaches. Not important. It's, are you living your happiest life?
Right.
And so I'm curious if you felt that from
No,
me.
absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly how I felt. And I felt like that how would I say it, contributed to the success we had and the uniqueness that you have as a strategist, strategy coach, was you weren't in it concerned with your own your own success or your own personality or your own basis for moving forward. Mm-hmm. It was, hey, we're going to do this for you. We're going to do what you feel is best for you. And you just, again, were there to be a guide and maybe open up my thoughts and pull some of those thoughts out that maybe have been sitting dormant for a little bit. Yeah. But not so much pushing to say, okay, this is how I'm going to, whatever. This is how Jessica's going to look the best. This is how you're going to come out, looking good with this client.
Yeah. And
it was more, okay, what's good for the client? And what kind of success can we get for that person rather than, for your coaching business?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if I hike someone into retirement and they're happy, not saying you're retired, but if I hike someone into partial retirement and they're way happier, I see that as a success.
Absolutely.
Because, this entrepreneurship game is hard and all the other things.
Well, and I see, along that line, I mean, I watch it with athletes. I watch it with business professionals. I watch people go past their prime. And just because that's all they know. All they've ever known is just grind and drive and push. And I see them go way beyond where they should be and where they would have been, whether it's more successful, happier, better family, whatever. They just keep driving, and they search out people that will support that.
Right.
So they maybe search out a certain coach or a certain program that will continue driving them when that's not what's best for them.
No. And
so I guess that was refreshing to work with you and realize, okay, I've been that grinder, I've been that driver, and to sit back and evaluate it and say, is that what's best for me at this point?
Right.
That's what was best for me, over the decades, but not necessarily right now.
Sure.
And just being open to that answer.
Yeah. I only have 2 more questions for you. All right. So one of the things I enjoyed so much about our working together is that you really embraced the process. You were not someone that was like, well, this hiking thing's sort of goofy, like I'll indulge her. Like you truly embrace the process to the point that I encourage all my clients to practice the Hike 31 method, which is literally just getting outside, getting in movement, unplugging for 30 minutes and carrying that little kind of field guide with you, right? So you can jot down some of your best ideas. You were so great at sending me these Voxer messages. I really look forward to them in the morning where you would share with me these ideas.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that and like what that process was like for you in our coaching like engagement, that in between our actual sessions together, you were hiking on your own to really dial in some of the concepts we were working on.
Well, the Voxer app was just so usable in terms of I'd be out hiking and not one thought, not two, but maybe 3 or 4 or 5 thoughts. And I'm like, this is really good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you get back into, I guess I would call it the conventional box. Mm-hmm. You're like, what was I thinking this morning? Where was my train of thought? Why were those 3 or 4 ideas just lining up so perfect?
Sure.
And where I would be hiking, wishing I was in front of one of my audiences.
Yeah.
And just sharing the thoughts as they came, because they come so easily when you're out there, again, outside of the box, if you will. And so the sharing with you, I would sometimes stop right in the middle. Normally I'm not carrying my phone.
Sure.
And I purposely carried it so that, because sometimes I would have a great thought, I wouldn't have my phone. By the time I got back to my vehicle, that
You'd
thought
forget.
was gone.
Yeah.
And I literally back up the trail.
Where was that thought? I'm going to find it on the trail.
But I'd go back and go, okay, it was about right here in the hike where I had that thought. Okay, where's that thought? Yeah. And I think so much of the, in coaching, especially the creativity is coming up with new ways to engage the people you're involved with. And that's where I really thought that was so powerful for me. I could get back if I put it into the Voxer app to you, then it became more real to me, if you will. It was more memorable, and it didn't leave my little brain. It was right there, and I was ready to work with it when I got back to the office.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
And I felt that with your Voxer messages. You had some really great ideas that we then put in the business strategy and utilized. Yeah. And so I think that was awesome. Last question.
All right.
So what would you say to someone that is hesitant about embracing the idea to get outside to unlock their wildest business ideas? What would you say to someone that's just used to sitting in the office and kind of is like, that feels goofy, I don't know if I can go there? What would you say?
Well, I guess with I would answer that with the initial disclaimer that I don't understand that at all, because it's been so productive over the years for me.
Sure.
It doesn't really matter what I've been training on. Years ago I did triathlons and I trained on bicycles a lot.
Yep.
And then when you're in the pool, you're swimming, and all these thoughts, and I really think that's part of why I've been successful, because I've had that time where the world's silent. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, where I would go with it is when our brains work best is when we have almost no input in terms of sound. And when are we ever without something being pushed into our brains?
Right.
We've got music, we've got radio, we've got car horns, we've got the sound of vehicles, we've got other people in our offices or in our buildings, we've got elevators, we've got everything, we've got dings, we've got, alarms, we've got all kinds of input.
Sure.
And when we're out on a trail and we're out by ourselves and maybe being guided with some questions from you, there's a whole nother dimension that opens up. And so I would just say, listen, first of all, I don't understand not wanting to get out. I just, but it's stop and think, when do we have time to let our brains wander, to let us think, to not have any, any music or any phones or any, anything going off in our minds, and letting that 30 minutes or 45 minutes, however long, letting your mind get out there, because you don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
But it's almost always constructive. You know, one of the things I shared with you is I drive without any.
Sure.
I'll sometimes drive, I'll go to Phoenix, it's 1,000 miles, and without any radio, without anything at all. And people just ask, are you, I would go nuts. 10 miles in, I'd be, having to turn the radio in.
Sure.
Listen, if you haven't done it, you can't, I guess you can't know what you're missing. You
Right.
don't know what you don't know. And I would encourage, just get out there and do it. And the results and the creativity and the newness in your thinking is going to be amazing.
I love it. We're going to end on that because that was
All right.
so good. I love it. Thank you, Zane.
You're welcome.
We have a couple minutes. We'll throw Grayson up here.
All right.